Good afternoon. Welcome back to the afternoon session of the Board of County Commissioners' regularly scheduled meeting. This time, I believe we have a 1:30 time certain. Mr. Merrill?
Yes, Commissioners. Item B5 is the item to select members of the Diversity Advisory Council. And I'll introduce the item. This is the culmination of some discussions that began late last year about forming a Diversity Advisory Council. And in January of this year, the board directed us to put together a process and to utilize the services of an organization called the National Diversity Council to assist in evaluating applicants for seats on the Diversity Advisory Council. The National Diversity Council is an organization that's existed for some time, and really their purpose, their expertise has been in assisting universities, corporations, other governments in doing similar kinds of activities as we're doing. And so we felt that certainly they had experience and also had objectivity. They were independent and could look at applications without really any bias or any other background agenda. So based on the action you took on January of this year, we enlisted the services of the National Diversity Council. They were not paid for their service. They did it pro bono. Their comments are advisory only. They aren't binding on this board. It's based solely on their expertise and their experience. They were not asked to develop a criteria for their review, and so they did not develop a criteria. What they had before them to take them through their process was the resolution that the board passed, which talks about the proposed purpose of our Diversity Advisory Council. And of course, they had the applications and the essays that each of the proposed members had to provide. And so that's the information that they had in front of them. And they did put a lot of effort into it. They did take their time reviewing it. And so as they were reviewing the applications and the essays during that process, an email came to my attention. I was given an email that had been generated by one of the applicants to the Diversity Advisory Council, and I was asked to submit that to the National Diversity Council for the review. And I wanted to, recognizing it would be a sensitive issue, I wanted to make sure whatever we did would be fair and certainly legal. So the first thing I did was check with the county attorney's office to make sure that there was no legal prohibition against me providing that document to the National Diversity Council, and there wasn't. But then I also felt that one possible outcome could have been that the National Diversity Council would have looked at this email and come to the conclusion that it had no bearing on the membership of that individual. And so I purposely took that email and redacted out information that would identify the author and any other information that I thought would create any sort of bias, and wanted them to look at it independently of their review of the applications. So in other words, the Diversity Council was looking at applications. They were continuing through their process. They completed that, and then they had this other document that I had sent them, and letting them look at them independently so as not to influence one or the other. And when they had finished reviewing that document, and that was provided in your backup, they responded with the email that is also in your materials, which indicates that the individual who we were working with said that she spoke with their chief executive officer, and he believes that the information in the redacted email should disqualify the individual from being able to be part of the advisory council. So at that point in time, what we had was their recommendation. We had a list that included that individual, and the author of that email is Mr. Terry Kemple. So their initial list included him as a recommended candidate. At that point, they didn't know that Mr. Kemple was the author. And then we had their other assessment that whoever had written the email should be disqualified from being a member. And out of respect and fairness for Mr. Kemple, I then asked him to come in and meet with me so I could let him know what had occurred and why I chose to go about it the way I did, and to find out from him what steps or what his decision would be going forward. And we had a good discussion. He did take some time then to consider what he would do, and then called back the following week and indicated he would want to continue in the application process. And so all of those materials are before you in your backup. So the list of recommended candidates has a title called Adjusted Recommendation. So the adjustment was made by me based on the subsequent review of the email. So again, just the important things here are, first of all, that the National Diversity Council's work is just advisory to you, and all that they had before them were the applications and the essays, and in the case of Mr. Kemple, the email. And so you're not bound by obviously anything that they recommend. And so the adjusted list of recommended candidates excludes Mr. Kemple, but of course that doesn't prohibit you from including him. He was in their original recommended list. So you do have some latitude in that respect. I will say that certainly was not singling out Mr. Kemple. This was obviously a very delicate and sensitive issue, and I took a lot of time to think about it. I didn't want to just react rashly, but if any other documentation had been provided to me similar to this on any other candidate, I would have treated it just the same way. But there was no other like information on any other candidate, and so, but just to be sure you understand, I wasn't certainly singling out Mr. Kemple, and we've had some good discussions, and he's here today, of course. So with that, I'll open it up for questions, and the step that you would be taking today then would be to approve a list of recommended members for the Diversity Advisory Council as you see fit. So with that, I'll open it up for comments and questions.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board? Commissioner Sharp.
Okay, so what actions then are we being asked to take today, or?
You have the what's entitled the adjusted recommended list in front of you. You can remove anybody from that list, or you can add anybody to that list that you choose, and then you can either vote on the list in aggregate in total, or you can vote on each member if you like. I mean, it's set up so you could just vote on the whole group, but obviously you can add or subtract names as you see fit.
And my first inkling when I heard about this was, again, to think that the first test of a diversity council is to be able to deal with a diverse board. I have read the letter, though, that was written. Need your help needed, homosexual activists to provide guidance on county policy in Hillsborough. Is that the letter that was written that had caused the concern by one of the proposed members?
Yes, that's correct. That's the redacted version. The original version is also provided in your backup.
Well, here's my concern. I supported this council, and I think it ought to be a diverse council. At the same time, and this is what I'm struggling with, Mr. Kemple, who has every right to, in fact, I supported you on the previous boards and groups. My concern is that I don't want this council to become a soapbox for anyone to be used beyond the purposes of the council itself. And my sense is, even from the letter that was written, that what it's going to do is, create ill will on a board, which really ought to be kind of just quietly working about the business of improving relationships in the community. And I'm not sure if the letter that I'm reading here, which, again, you have every right to write, and which makes it very clear that there is this agenda at work, and then it spells out what the agenda is going to help us achieve our objectives, which is to try to find a way to bring people together to deal with these issues. So, I mean, I don't like anyone's name being taken off, but at the same time, had your name been on, I was going to be asking these questions and you and others as to whether it's really the wisest place for you to be. The purpose of these councils, as far as I'm concerned, from my perspective as a board member, again, is not to give soapbox to activists. Not that an activist should be excluded. So there's a lot of, even to myself, you see the contradictions. Activists should have the opportunity. But the purpose ought to be, number one priority, working with the other members to try to find a way to resolve some long-standing issues.
Commissioner Chris?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess to make a statement, but I have some questions and of various people, because I need to be able to make a decision on this, and I've got to get some answers to my questions in order to be able to do that. When Mr. Merrill first came forward with the idea of a diversity council, I thought, why? And then when we spoke, it made sense that what you wanted to do was try to bring all the parties to the table to openly discuss some simple issues and some complex and difficult issues, so that this board wouldn't get bogged down in having to workshop all these things all the time, and that these issues could get vented in a public, in an open, in an inclusive environment where differences can be hammered out, where there's consensus that could be built and then brought to this board to make wise, intelligent, and fruitful decisions. When we started looking at the nitty-gritty and nuts and bolts of who and what and should be involved, what went through my mind is the pure definition of diversity is both sides of an issue. It's all the differences. It's like looking at a diamond in all of its various sides. And regardless of which side an individual may be on, that's the beauty of this culture and our community, is that diversity is here. And to exclude anyone or anyone's perspective from that process really, shoots in the eye of what we're trying to accomplish here, and that's to have an open forum in the public eye where dialogue can find fruitful compromises and solutions to problems that we have to deal with. I guess at this juncture, I really believe that the people that this gentleman represents needs to have a seat at the table. Whether or not he's the right guy to do that will depend on the questions I have for him. But I need to be able to ask him those questions. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call him up to the podium to ask him some questions.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kemple? Kemple?
Yes, sir.
First of all, why do you have an interest in this council? Why do you want to serve on it?
Commissioner, I've worked in this community for 17 years representing people who have needs in the community, who needed an advocate. I represent children and families through the work I do here with you at the County Commission, through the work I do at the school board, through the work I do when I go up to Tallahassee to work with the state legislature. And I think that the reason I want to be on the council is kind of embodied in the way in the original question that you asked of why was this council created. If there's going to be a diversity council in Hillsborough County, then it should represent all of the people of Hillsborough County. You know, this isn't a political statement, but I ran for school board and over 184,000 people voted for me. That wasn't a majority, so I didn't win. But it shows that there's a significant minority of the people in Hillsborough County who believe in the things that I believe. And Commissioner Sharp, to directly address your concern, and it's a valid concern. First of all, emails written by activists are written to do as much as they can to viscerally motivate people to get engaged, because we live in a passive society. So the email reflects that need, that desire. But I've been on the Human Relations Board for 18 or 16 months or whatever it is. You haven't seen one thing in the paper, except when I first got selected and there was all this uproar about he's going to tear up the board. There hasn't been one thing in the paper. I haven't published anything, and there's been nothing published about me. And that's really the way that I want to serve on this board. I believe that I have I'm a grandson of immigrants. My grandparents came here from Germany and from Russia. My grandfather was in the German army, went to Russia, met my grandmother, married her, came here. He became a minister in a Christian church. And I've learned the values that I have through that heritage, through my parents. My brothers and I learned that heritage. And I believe that it's my responsibility as a citizen of this county to stand up for the principles that have been instilled in me.
Mr. Kemple, I don't think anybody questions your loyalty to your views and perspectives and your effectiveness in getting those your positions out there and even representing the constituency that you do. The second question I have is, I need some assurances on. I need to get a feel of what kind of participant that you would be. Would you be a disruptive grenade launcher, or would you be approaching this from a perspective that, you're going to use this as a forum to be able to share your views and the people who think the way that you do, but be respectful of the process?
Commissioner, again, I would answer the same way that I answered Commissioner Sharp's question. I've been on the Human Relations Board for 16 months. There's another member of the board here in the room. And although we've had disagreement on some issues, I think that if he were to come and stand at the podium, he would have to say that I've not been disruptive in those meetings. We've had disagreements over things, and we've worked together to find ways to come to a conclusion that was not violative of anybody's principles. So, that's what my heart is. That's what my desire is, to be a solution to, not to be a problem, but to be a solution to a problem.
To be a voice in the process, but if the process goes a different direction, then maybe you're vocalizing to understand and be receptive and respectful of majority rules in the committee.
To at least have my perspective heard, and yes, to abide by the rules of the decision of the majority.
All right, because I think that, at least what I'm hearing from people is that there's a fear that you would get on there and launch grenades to blow up the process. And when I look back at what you have served on, I haven't really seen that. And I needed to hear that from you, because it provides a whole lot more comfort. The other question I have is, your name was on the list. You made the final cut, right?
Yes, it was. I was on the original list when Mr. Merrill asked me to come in to discuss this. My name was on the list. And
are you aware of any process that's in place of venting that list or disqualifying members of that list that would be universally applied across the board?
As I said this morning, and I don't want to reiterate, but basically I was singled out. I was targeted, or whatever you want to call it. The additional information regarding me was brought into the equation, and I was removed from a list that existed of people who had been selected based on established standard criteria because of that additional information. And I think that if I was going to be removed from the list because of additional information, that removal should have been done by you, because you have the right, through majority vote, to add or subtract anybody you want. I appreciate Mr. Merrill's being fair with me and also the way that he presented this, but I don't believe it was Mr. Merrill's place to take me off the list.
Well, I agree and I disagree. I agree that this board, the policy and the authority is vested and rests with this board, and it should rest with this board, and that we shouldn't delegate that. Where I respectfully disagree is if there is a policy for venting out or adding or subtracting from the list that is universally applied, then, then it should stand. But so far, no one's been able to show me that.
And I appreciate that, Commissioner, and I would agree with you if there was some standard policy, but as far as I know, there's no standard policy. As a matter of fact, Mr. Merrill said that the organization that did this vetting didn't have any objective criteria. It was basically a subjective decision based on the two pieces of the documentation that we sent them.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you allowing me to ask my questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kemple.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miller.
Well, Mr. Chairman, since Mr. Kemple is standing up asking questions, I have a question to ask you.
Yes, sir.
Why did you write the email?
Because I believe that first of all, I have the biblical beliefs that I hold, okay, and I felt that it was necessary to make sure that there was a voice, at least one voice, and hopefully several voices that had effectively the same perspective that I did. I mean, I guess that's the simplest way that I could say it, Commissioner. I tried to encourage other people to submit applications to this Diversity Council.
That's it?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Then
That's your answer?
were you? Help me understand what it is you want me to tell you.
No, I'm just trying to see. You started off by, we need your help homosexual activities to provide guidance on county policies in Hillsborough. Then you went on to write a lengthy email.
Okay. Well, okay.
Why did you use some of the terminology in your email?
Clear. I understand. And actually, a lot of it's in the email itself, Commissioner. It's been my experience as I've gone through. First of all, let me say, you all probably know this, but I've been working in this vein of effort in advocacy in social values, if you will, for 17 years. So I have a great deal of history in this. And typically, whenever I've seen any kind of council or commission that had the word diversity in it, the basic purpose for the council or commission was to promote governmental or societal recognition or approval or promotion of homosexuality and homosexual behavior.
So today when we talked about a 5-2 plan, we talked about diversity. You include that also in that type of language of being the thought process of changing the makeup of this county commission with homosexuality?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, ask me the question again, please.
Okay, let me ask you another question.
Sure.
Are you a candidate for a school board?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I make a motion that we accept the recommendation of National Diversity Council applicants by the category for the Diversity of Advisory Council submitted by the county administrator.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Kemple. Sure. Commissioner Sharp.
And I think perhaps that might have, I think Mr. Miller's final question might have been, and again, it's certainly not an insult. I think it's a legitimate issue, which is having candidates serving on these boards that could then again potentially use the board as a platform for their campaigns. One issue which I have a concern with. I really appreciated the questions that Commissioner Chris asked, because I thought they touched on some very valuable points that I felt about your participation on the Human Rights Committee, which was that, with the exception of when you were placed on the committee and there was all this excitement, you comported yourself in a professional manner. And again, as I've said many times, the diversity committee ought to be able to handle diversity. But here's my concern, and I think Commissioner Miller touched on it a bit. In the email that you wrote you regularly see my emails, and you know that whenever you see the word diversity in relationship to our culture, it is a code for some effort to forward the homosexual agenda. Now, that I can imagine or understand how that letter might be read by people who are also interested in either serving on that committee or participating. Because when I supported the creation of the committee, it wasn't for the purposes of furthering any agenda. It really was other than the agenda of figuring out a way for us all to live together. When I supported the domestic partner relationship, I was accused of all sorts of things from some friends and foes alike about supporting agendas. It had nothing to do, at least from my perspective, about supporting an agenda. It was about supporting common, basic human rights in our community for all citizens, irrespective of who they might be. And I'm not asking questions. I'm just simply stating that I supported it, and it had nothing to do with the agenda. But I did have a lot of well-meaning individuals on a number of sides come to me and say, Mr. Sharp, you have to understand, I've been in this for a long time, and I know what the agenda is all about. And sometimes it's healthy to have an outsider's perspective and to be able just to kind of step in and freshly and cleanly look at the issue and say, you know what, I understand all the agendas. Everyone seems to sometimes have an agenda. For the purposes of getting along, we're going to sit down and set the agendas aside, and we're going to have different people serving on a committee for the purposes of finding a way to promote diversity, but not as you've defined it. Because under your definition of diversity, it's very clear what you believe diversity, when we use the word diversity, what it means. And I think that could perhaps affect the way you come about handling this committee. And so that was just, that's how I read the letter, and that was one of the concerns that I had. I understand that anyone would come to that committee and have their own thoughts and opinions shaped through a lifetime of experience. But I'm concerned about the passage, and I don't think it reflects what the board intended when we established this committee. In fact, I know it's not what I intended. It was about bringing people of difference together for the purposes of not having even this inflammatory conversation, but really an opportunity to work together.
Commissioner Beckner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The words well said, Commissioner Sharp, and some of your comments as well, Commissioner Miller. When we first discussed the concept, and this actually goes back to December of 2010, and in fact, my colleague, Commissioner Higginbotham, talked about the needs for diversity. It is to represent a diverse need and the diverse views of our community. However, when we're bringing people together to talk about diversity and how we can create more multicultural understanding, you have to come to the table with a premise that, number one, you have an open mind, and number two, that it is in your heart and it is in your intent to bring people together and to find and to figure out how we build a more inclusive community. And when I received the email from Mr. Kemple, which many of you have cited different quotes from, the main portion of this email that you did not even hit upon, which I think is even key, Mr. Kemple states, first, we need to let our BOCC know that we don't think this is the important work they should be doing. We don't think this is the important work that they should be doing. I think it is our job as government to bring people together, to build inclusiveness in our community. And so the first question that enters my mind is when Mr. Kemple sends an email like this, what is his intent? Does he intend to get on this committee to try to create controversy? Or is this another one of his platforms to figure out how he can use the political process, how he can use government to exclude more people from our community? Mr. Kemple is not. Mr. Kemple's intent on this committee needs to be in question because his past history is about how to exclude other people from government. We hear about needing to have a diverse viewpoint, and that it's my diverse viewpoint. We use religious beliefs. But when you use the process of government to exclude other people, and you use your personal opinions to try to create public policy that discriminates, promotes hatred, bigotry, and divides this community, that is where the line must be drawn, and we must say that is not our role as government, and those types of individuals should not be involved in this type of a process. Look at Mr. Kemple's history. He has spoken out against forming gay, lesbian, straight alliances through the schools. He has spoken out against trying to silence the voice of our Muslims in the community by trying to exclude them from schools, from speaking in schools.
Mr. Kemple, please be quiet. I'm going to have you removed. Continue.
This is what we need to consider, board members, is the intent. Mr. Kemple's history of trying to exclude other people from the community is what I think needs to be key, and why he should not be serving on this board. I want to just bring up, Holly, can you bring up this quote? I think I'm going to close with this note on the third slide that we have. When the political discourse resorts to intolerance and hate, we all lose in what makes America great and the progress made in society. And that was quoted by Pablo Pantallo, who, by the way, just stepped down from the RNC representing the Hispanics and the Republican parties because of the great division that has been resulted, and the great discourse and the attempted exclusion of people in our community. Ladies and gentlemen, this suits us up. This county has had a history of excluding people time and time again. We are 20 years behind where we should be. 20 years ago, there was a comprehensive human rights ordinance that made us a more inclusive community. 2 years later, that was reversed. 2005, this board supported banning gay pride events. Banning gay pride events. Is that an inclusive community? That is what Mr. Kemple represents. That is what he advocates for. You know, he even advocates against signing gay pride recognitions. I mean, look at the controversy that we have. There is an existing proclamation out there that recognizes the contributions of the gay and lesbian and straight business communities that rebuilt Ybor City. And this has been an ongoing controversy that Mr. Kemple has promoted. He seems to have a problem with even recognizing those individuals. In fact, the threats that he has made against each and every one of you, that you're in violation of the gay ban pride that we put in 2005, is the reason why you should not sign it. He holds you hostage by threatening to have people that are more extreme than he is run against you if you dare sign or support the equal rights. This has been a blemish on this county, and this needs to stop. And this government and this board needs to take affirmative action and make a statement that we are going to promote inclusiveness in our community. You can disagree. You don't have to love the gay community. You don't have to believe in them. You don't have to, you can have different feelings about many different people. But when you want to try to create public policy that excludes people, this BOCC needs to take a stand and saying we're not going to tolerate that. So I'm supporting the motion on the floor.
Commissioner Christ.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Different perspective. You know, excluding him is not being inclusive. The bottom line is there's a constituency out there in our county that are voters and that are residents that think and feel the same way that Mr. Kemple does. And to say that they don't deserve to have a seat or a voice at the table is being exclusive. The bottom line is if we want to move forward in this county, we can only do that if we have an open forum where you can have open deliberation and all warring sides can come together and talk freely across the table. We have to begin allowing everyone an opportunity to be able to look each other straight in the eye and speak their piece and work out a solution. Some of the finest pieces of legislation that I worked through the process that dealt with some of the most controversial issues, I wasn't able to do until I brought warring sides to the table that wouldn't even speak to each other until I forced them to the table. Whether you agree or you disagree with that man, Whether you believe or disbelieve in that man or what he has to say or what he thinks or feels, the bottom line is he and the people he speaks for and represents they have a right to have a seat at that table. They are part of the diversity in our community. And if we are going to have a successful board here and we're going to make rational, prudent, reasonable, common sense decisions, we have to have a package come to us that's a consensus. The only way we can build a consensus if both warring forces are at the table. To say that you can go to court in the United States or the state of Florida and not have the warring sides be represented is not the part of our democracy and our democratic process. I mean, heck, even in criminal court, you got the prosecutors and you've got the public defenders. In many cases, they don't even talk to each other until they walk into the courtroom. But in this particular case, whether you are for or against what he represents, whether you believe or disbelieve in what he thinks, the bottom line is he's still going to be out there. The people he represents are still going to be out there. And it's better to have them at the table and part of the decision-making and part of the discussion. And most importantly, part of the learning process. People's perspectives can change. But you're not going to provide or foster a healthy environment to nurture that unless you open the door through inclusion. Mr. Kemple, you know, I think you deserve to have a seat at that table. Unless there's a process to disqualify you that's evenly applied across the board, you deserve to have a seat at that table. As long as you aren't disruptive and you are respectful of the other peoples that are at that table and their perspectives, and you are a working member of that board, I am personally quite comfortable. But if I learn that you're disruptive and you're a grenade launcher and you're, you know, prohibiting them from moving forward with working through the issues, then we will have some issue over it. But, you know, I encourage you to participate, whether on the board or off the board. Share your perspective in a respectful, peaceful, lawful way. And that's part of the democratic process. My wife and I had some very interesting discussions during campaign season, her being a Democrat and me being a Republican, and many of the cases differing on issues and candidates. But you know what? We're still married, and it's because we've learned to respect the process and each other's perspective. And there are times where I'm able to change hers. And there's times where she's able to change mine. And there are times where we both come together in a common belief that's different than either one of us had initially. And after talking with you here today, I feel comfortable that, you know, to give you a try. But I have no reservations to haul you back if you're disruptive. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion that we move forward with the recommendations, including Mr. Kemple's name.
Guess that'd be a substitute motion?
No, you can do it as an amendment to the motion. You can do it as a substitute motion. I'm doing it as an amendment to the motion, so it's the original motion. But
Commissioner Miller?
No, ma'am, I don't have to accept it. Parliamentary procedure-wise, you vote on the amendment first, and then you vote on the motion. So I would suggest that we follow it that way.
Commissioner Beckner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And what great passion I get to see from you. And this is part of, I guess, what we missed from the Tallahassee. But I appreciate your passion around this, Commissioner Chris. And Commissioner Chris, it's not about a difference of opinions. It's not about a difference of viewpoints. It's about intent. It's about intent. Why would you want to serve on a board that you don't even believe should be in existence? Why? 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 That, to me, exhibits that Mr. Kemple does not have any good intentions of serving on this board as a productive member. That says it all right here for me. I didn't support his candidacy on in 2010 to Human Relations Board for the simple fact because I didn't believe also that he should be representing with his background on that board. It turns out that was fine. I didn't have an email at that particular time either that stated that he doesn't believe in the mission of the Human Relations Board. No other candidate submitted that type of information. Had I gotten that information from anybody else, it would have gone through the same process. I would ask everybody here
if you saw an email, and just replace homosexual with disabilities, replace it with women, replace it with any other name of a protected class, if part of the mission of that board is to promote inclusiveness and diversity, and yet an individual is on that board and they don't believe that to begin with, why should that individual be included or have a seat at that board? I tell you, I represent, as I mentioned before, a very diverse county. When I first got elected, I was most interested, as I learned on the campaign trail, I became impassioned and very interested in the Muslim community. And when I got elected, I decided to do outreach to them. I knew part of the principles of Islam goes against homosexuality. And I know that part of their beliefs, they don't believe in homosexuality. I walked into their mosque and I saw a book that specifically talked about homosexuality and how it was immoral. But you know what? I looked at that and I said, I believe in the contributions that the Muslim community brings to our society here. I learned about the charitable work that they do on behalf of the sick and poor. For those of you who have never visited a mosque, here on Sly Avenue, look at the free clinic that's not even advertised for the sick and the poor, and you don't even have to be a Muslim to go there. And so I knew at that standpoint that part of my role was to reach out to them and to create that inclusiveness. And you know what? We focus on what we can accomplish together and how we can build a better relationship. And I value them as members of our communities. It's very clear from Mr. Kemple that under no conditions does he value members of the gay community. He has worked tirelessly to exclude them from public policy, whether it's the ability to get married, whether it's ability to engage in a domestic partnership relationship, pride, whatever. He doesn't want them recognized. How can you provide a seat at the table from somebody who under no condition feels that certain members of our community are important and valued? That's my point. And I am sure that if you look at that makeup in the board, that I'm sure you will find differing opinions. But right now, as I see that makeup and I review those applications, I take their statements at face value that they want to build a more inclusive community. And Mr. Kemple, even on his application, he blatantly misled the board reviewing it. He specifically said that he advocates for equality for everyone. For everyone. A blatant misrepresentation to the Diversity Advisory Council. How can you advocate putting someone on the board that doesn't, number one, believe in the mission, that expresses ill will and intent, and blatantly misrepresents himself to the National Diversity Advisory Council? I don't know. You have to figure out how you do that. All I know is that when I view this and know the background and see what I see, one would have to be pretty naive or bound by the political shackles that Mr. Kemple has put around so many to not see that he is not appropriate for this board.
Commissioner Merman.
Well, sitting between these two is very interesting. Very huge passion on both sides. And this is going to be short. Sitting in the middle of this, being a female, females are 54% of the voters out there. I'm only one person on this board. I don't think we're being included. Actually, if we're going to talk about building inclusiveness, I wish there was a category for women on here. But I think we need to be more tolerant. And Commissioner Chris, I support you. I actually think I've known Terry Kemple for so long, and it's not that I'm necessarily, I understand what you're saying, Commissioner Beckner, completely. And I think totally it was a bonehead decision for him to send that email out. Why did you do that? I don't even see you doing that. And you single out a commissioner, shame on you. That is not appropriate. But, on the other hand, you have worked within the Human Relations Board, like Commissioner Chris says. We haven't heard a peep, but I'm going to be in his camp. I hear a word, it'll be back here and take you off. And that's where I'm at right now, because I think we have to be inclusive. We have to be tolerant and make this work so that we can get the diversity to come back to us with good policy and things that we should be doing in our community with all the things that we're doing here in the county. So I will support it. I'm very upset you sent that email out. I actually think you should almost apologize to Commissioner Beckner for singling him out, but that's probably in the place. But I think we should just move forward, and Commissioner Chris, I'm going to support your amendment.
Commissioner Sharp.
And when staff made the decision, or the decision was made to remove his name, what was the reason that was given specifically for taking him off?
I didn't see it as us removing his name. I was taking the judgment of the National Diversity Council and applying
what was the judgment? I'm just trying to get down to the judgment. What was the judgment that they used? The rationale for including a list of names which did not have his name on the list. Did they give any reason?
No, their original recommended list included his name, but that was simply based on his application essay.
I know, and they got the additional information.
Then
they didn't give any reasons for why they made the change. It was just the email that you have from them. Right.
Is really the only response that we had from them.
I mean, I like, in my own personal life, and even my own political life, I've always been one that has been obtuse to the differences of groups and factions. Before I even came in here, I was on the phone dealing with some individuals in a particular community, and they're all upset about other elements of the community. And my message to them is, look, I spend my life trying to figure out a way to work through it. But there's always differences, and oftentimes heated. And I think a very interesting exchange and a learned exchange between Commissioner Beckner and Commissioner Chris. I know they're good friends, and it was done in a very professional manner, but I got a lot out of listening to both of you. I really did get a lot out of listening to both of you. And my concern for our country is that we got to figure out a way to work and live with each other. And this issue here that we're dealing with is a very important issue, one that our community is just, I think, recently as a nation, we've gotten comfortable with having the conversation. I will say for the record, the board in 2005, I believe it was, didn't ban prides in the county. What they did was it was a recognition that the county itself would not participate. There was a pride parade right after the proclamation was announced in the county parks, and we had police protection, which was fantastic. The gentleman who won an award for what was the recognition we give out? An annual award for not heroism, but Mr. Dossman.
The Moral Courage Award.
Moral Courage Award. I think that was like on the same day. Went to a gentleman was very open about his lifestyle. We weren't in any way being discriminatory. We were looking specifically at the accomplishments that the gentleman presented to our community. I've tried to, Mr. Kemple, go about my life not worrying about an individual's private, personal lifestyle. One of the things I feel strongly about it, I don't think it's anyone's business, in particular not government's, why people make the decisions they make. I'm very comfortable allowing people to make decisions, adults, Americans. In other countries, the Second World War, they put stars on you to identify who you were. A label, the pink, star, representing who you were. And they would go after individuals. And I thought that was reprehensible. And I love the fact that our nation stood up to that type of disgusting filth. And so we didn't allow that to happen. We fought it. And I know that's not what, in any way, what you're trying to do, but my concern is that we've got to figure out a way to live together. And so I think that this committee might have a way of doing that. I just think that by writing the letter, you've kind of made it clear in your mind what you think diversity is, and I don't see it the same way. If I were reviewing this and I read the application without knowing who you were, and I read what you had written about the word diversity, I would have said, well, he's already coming in with his own preconceived notions. Is this the right person for this committee? And I would have to say I don't think so for what we're trying to achieve. I would have no problem with you serving on the committee, none whatsoever. But I think for what we're trying to achieve, it might set us back. However, inarticulate, I've stated it, it's kind of where I am. So I'll be supporting the original motion.
Commissioner Christ.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that Commissioner Beckner, you know I've got a lot of respect for you, and the fact that you come well prepared, you well think out your arguments, and you're so passionate for what you believe in, and you do what you do because you believe it's the right thing to do. And there are times we agree, and there are times that we disagree. I think that we both are agreeing that we want to see progress made in cultivating quality products for this commission to consider, regardless of what those products are. We want to see the committee be fruitful and one that's congenial enough to be able to dialogue and deliberate. Where we're disagreeing, I think, is on the mission of this committee, of this task force. What I view is that the task force is to work out those differences on those issues that are so contentious, that come to this board and bog us down and waste time, frankly. And in order for that to happen, you have to have diversity in the Diversity Council. You've got to have all perspectives, all warring sides at the table. And they've got to be able to deliberate, you know, in hopes that we reach some common ground. And, you know, Mr. Kemple, there's a large mosque in my district and a lot of hardworking, family-oriented folks that believe in the same family unit that you do, that care deeply and volunteer a lot there. You know, if chosen to serve on this council, I strongly recommend that you take the time and take a look at what they're doing. And you know what, folks? That's going to be an opportunity that wouldn't have existed otherwise. And I think that, you know, education is a very powerful tool. And Mr. Kemple, by serving on this board, is going to help educate others, and the others are going to help educate him. And what will come out of it, I think, is good dialogue and a better work product for our consideration. We would be doing a very injustice to ourselves and to the constituents we represent if we don't include Mr. Kemple and his perspective on that task force, because it is a significant constituency out there in the communities we represent, and they need to be able to learn from the others that will be seated at that table, and they need to share with others what their perspectives are and why, so that we can get constructive dialogue and hopefully build constructive consensus. You know, I respectfully ask your support of my motion, because I think that the final outcome will be one that we all will benefit from.
Commissioner Beckner, and then we're going to vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner Chris, we do get along, and we do have different viewpoints, and it's one of the things that's great about here is we're able to respectfully debate and respectfully agree or disagree with their issues. In order to be able to learn, you have to be a willing participant with an open mind. Again, I go into many different segments of our communities, and we talk about gay people. I go into the very conservative districts, and we talk about people that say to me, you know what, Kevin, I really don't I'm not really, I don't know about this whole gay thing, and I understand that you are, but you know what? I respect and value you as a member of our community, and I think that you have value here, and you also work on so many other different issues, and I think that you are just a good public servant. So I just wanted to let you know that. So, Commissioner Chris, I've got a lot of people in the conservative community that don't necessarily understand, have a lot of interaction with the gay community, but they don't go out advocating that gay people should be excluded and try to influence a political system, influence public policy to promote discrimination. We can have that. Those types of individuals that are open and willing to learn and to embrace inclusiveness, I think have every right and should be at this table. But with the individuals that all they do is advocate against exclusion are not there to learn. They are there to promote and try to cause more influence of why and justify why members of our community should be excluded. And those, I don't believe, are productive members on a task force or board that is meant to bring people together. Learning experiences can happen all the time. That's what I love about our community. I love how different they are. And you know what? We can have differences. You know what? Again, I don't fully understand, nor do I agree with all the aspects of Islam, but you know what? I embrace the Muslim community. You know why? Because they add so much value to our community. I can say that about nearly each and every culture and different members of our community. You know what? I don't fully understand your beliefs and who you are, but you know what? I love you as a citizen. I love you as a citizen of our community. And you know what? I value you because I believe every single person adds value to our community. But when you come to the table and you don't even believe that, how can you have productive and fruitful dialogue? That doesn't promote change. Those individuals aren't going to change. I have accepted that there are individuals, as there have been in the past, that no matter what the color of your skin, no matter who you love in your life, what religion you practice, they're going to hate you, and they're going to find ways to try to exclude you. And you know what? We have to realize that Mr. Kempel may fall in that category, and you know what? That's his right to believe what he does. But you know what? What we have to stop doing as government is discriminating against people and allowing people like Mr. Kempel to influence the political process to exclude others. That is not the role of government. Our role is to figure out ways that we can work together to create multicultural diversity and understanding and to bring our community together. And those are the people that we need at that table to figure out how we can make Hillsborough County a better place to live, work, and play.
All right, final comments. First of all, I appreciate and respect the comments from every board member here this afternoon. I do want to say I do appreciate Commissioner Beckner's comments regarding embracing the Muslim community. I've been told that no elected official has spoken at the Mosque of Sly and Orient more than I have, and I'm the one responsible for allowing them to legally operate their non-conforming clinic years ago. So I appreciate you reaching out to establishing a relationship with the Muslim community. The first thing that brought up, Commissioner Sharp, I believe, did it almost about an hour ago, so I forgot, referenced the ability of candidates to serve. And I thought about that myself, and I'm not mistaken, I believe, because it went back to my first race in 2002 when a couple of my opponents served on boards, and I asked the same question at the time. I don't think there's anything that prevents or excludes candidates from serving on boards. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I mean, I share some of Commissioner Sharp's concerns regarding Mr. Kemp's comments. I mean, if a commissioner feels an applicant should not be on a board because of his or her political, philosophical, or spiritual beliefs, then I have no problem with not supporting that individual. I'm more concerned about the process and the organization that we've utilized. Mr. Kempel's on the list. He's not on the list. There's no criteria. After being asked for the criteria, the organization is no longer interested in participating with us. Makes me question the process we've utilized. Perhaps this would have better been set up if, like our typical committees, we have the applicants, and there's an asterisk next to the ones that are recommended. I don't know. What I do know is that we have members on Heartline that oppose mass transit. We had members of our Economic Prosperity Committee that are anti-growth. We even had a Planning Commission member who supported abolishing the Planning Commission. So it's not unique to have differing views of board members. And this county commission has a history of providing balance and difference of opinion on these boards. So at the end of the day, while I respect everyone's opinion, I keep going back to that, and that's why I am going to support the amendment. Amendment was by Commissioner Chris. We'll need a second to that.
I did.
By Commissioner Merman. Please, before you vote on the amendment, to add Mr. Kemple back to the recommended list.
Motion carried 4-3. Commissioners Beckner, Miller, and Sharp voted no.
Okay, now we go back to the original motion by Commissioner Miller. Second, was that Commissioner Sharp?
I think you seconded.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any comment? Commissioner Miller?
Mr. Chairman,
So where are we now? So we're,
The original motion, including Mr. Kemple.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to move that we lay B5 on the table.
And is that until the next meeting?
That's until we decide to bring it back. I move we lay it on the table. Lay it on the table.
Second. Mr. Klein?
Mr. Chairman, that's a non-debatable motion.
Yeah, I just wanted to
We just have to
confirm
vote on it.
that is indefinite.
I am uncertain about that, sir.
I'm certain. The terminology, if I may speak, Mr. Chairman, I'm familiar with Robert's rules. The motion is that Commissioner Miller is making is to leave pending, and pending is open-ended. It's a non-debatable motion which goes to a vote, and if the vote follows suit with what we just saw, then it fails.
Okay. Chip, you have anything to add on that?
Mr. Chairman, under Rule 9 of your Rules of Order, it requires a second.
It was seconded.
It was seconded. I'm sorry, I did not hear that.
Beckner seconded.
Okay, you have a motion by Commissioner Miller, second Commissioner Bettner. Commissioner Miller, would you just restate your motion?
Basically, I move to lay B5 on the table.
Okay. Please record your vote.
Motion carried 4-3. Commissioners Chris, Higginbotham, and Merman voted no.
Okay. Thanks for the discussion.
Commissioners, your next item is your 2 p.m. Public hearing, D1, adopting a final assessment resolution to create a water and wastewater impact fee assessment unit 13201.
Excuse me just a minute, if I could have the floor. We've got a time certain at 2:15, and there are folks who have been sitting here for about half an hour, 45 minutes. They're non-staff. The one we have coming up is pretty quick. Could we move them up? Do I need a board? I know we're taking them out of order, but since they travel here.
By all means.
Well, thank you.
So we're doing the F2?
Yeah, let me get to it. Yeah, thank you for letting me take this out of order, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Merrill. If you think about when you're driving around on an interstate or country road somewhere other than Hillsborough County, you always notice and must take pause at the beauty of the wildflowers. And it came to my attention through a member of the Native Plant Society, actually the president of the Native Plant Society, that we did not have a wildflower program or resolution in play here in Hillsborough County. And I learned through the Native Plant Society president that there's also funding available if we pass this resolution from the Native Wildflower Association to put this program in place. I've asked several folks to just come to today and speak briefly from Keep Hillsborough Beautiful. I think we have Patricia DePlasso, Debbie Evanson. I don't know who's going to come forward. And Stephen Grant, I don't know if he's here from IFAS or not. I see his name on my list. All right. I don't know if Stephen has anything to add, and I know that the president of the Florida Native Plant Society said absolutely she would not speak, but my wife Devin is in the audience. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see you all. My name is Patrick Plasko, and I am from Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful. We are the local Keep America Beautiful affiliate, and we support the Florida Wildflower Foundation's vision and core values that are stated in their strategic plan. We understand the significant role that wildflowers play in the community, environment, and Florida culture, past and present. A wildflower is defined as one that is native to the country and has not been cultivated or modified by artificial selection or breeding. Wildflowers have many benefits and should be actively grown to ensure our future health and well-being. Wildflowers are special because they can be naturally vibrant or subtle. They're very important to us because they help maintain a healthy ecosystem and they attract beneficial insects. In turn, these insects help fertilize our crops and our food for other wildlife. Wildflowers support entire ecosystems for pollinators, birds, and small animals. These symbiotic relationships need to be maintained. Our wildflowers naturally adapt themselves to suit difficult situations in order to survive. They are drought tolerant and are perfect to plant on steep slopes or in poor soil. They're a natural air filter and produce breathable oxygen, and they also help purify the water and prevent erosion. Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful would like to partner with the Florida Wildflower Foundation with our newest initiative, the Florida Learning Garden. The Florida Learning Garden is an interactive ecological experience that includes examples of environmentally sustainable practices that embrace Florida-friendly landscaping principles and waste reduction concepts. Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful would like to endorse and partner with the Florida Wildflower Foundation. KTBB can support the following initiatives. We can assist with the wildflower awareness by creating a wildflower garden at the Florida Learning Garden. We will include educational lessons and displays at the garden to identify the significance, value, and variety of Florida wildflowers. And most importantly, outside the Florida Learning Garden, Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful can assist with the planting of the seeds along the roadways throughout Hillsborough County. Plant seeds, not litter, has been a long-standing tagline for Keep America Beautiful. We at Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful would like to see more flowers and less litter on our public spaces and rights-of-ways. According to Keep America Beautiful, greening and beautification play an important role in vibrant communities. Beautiful public places positively impact the lives of area residents, visitors, businesses, and institutions. Green spaces restore our local economies, creating stronger, more cohesive communities with real dollar and cents benefits. Our native plantings enhance both the environmental and economic sustainability of neighborhoods and regions. Wildflower plantings enrich lives by the enhancement of our public spaces. Keep America Beautiful agrees and has stated that beautification and greening restores our hope, our schools, our families, our pride, our honor, our passion, our creativity, our beauty, our businesses, our vision, our economy, and our lives. We hope that wildflowers and their impact grow right here in Hillsborough County. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no debate, I'll make a motion. I see a light on.
Commissioner
Sharp.
Oh, yes.
Sorry about that.
You.
I'm a lover of wildflowers. I know.
Every subject today.
And I was not going to say anything. I was going to try to come in and say nothing on any of these items, but I actually think this is kind of a cool item. First off, it's a great item to follow the last one, so
Yeah.
glad we're talking flowers. And love wildflowers and love to see them along our right-of-way. And I love the relationship, the symbiotic relationship that you mentioned between wildflowers and beehives. And since we tried residential bees and it didn't work, I was wondering if maybe we do have right-of-way beehives. We have a friendly amendment to allow right-of-way beehives with our wildflowers. I love my wildflower honey, and but no, I think this is a great item. We had an issue with bees not too long ago. I like them. Most of the members here don't. But really appreciate what you're trying to do and what Commissioner Higginbotham is doing, and I think it's a great addition to our community, and I'm just having a little fun with these. Talk to you later.
Okay, Commissioner Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see that my colleagues here see my button on and are all looking at me because I was the lone leading adversary in opposition against the expansion of the bees into highly dense populated areas. Have family members that are deathly allergic to them. But I just wanted to reassure you and my colleagues that this is a bee issue that doesn't bug me. So I love wildflowers, and I appreciate what it is you're trying to do.
Thank you, and you can sit down.
Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Higginbotham,
Does that make
make the motion?
Yes, and just one other point of information. This will require altering our mowing habits, and every community that starts the wildflower program, people initially are going to say you're not mowing, is to get the flowers started. So it's not going to be the staff is not doing their job. We're just trying to get the flowers back on the roadway. Many of them are going to come up, and if you look right now, you see flowers all along the roadway. They're naturally occurring because we're not mowing in some of these spots. You're seeing it at ELAP, where the folks who are running the program saying where we're allowing them to come back up on their own. They're doing it, but you will hear that, and there will be some modifications, I'm sure, to how they time herbicide applications. But with that, I will make a motion that we pass a resolution in support of the Florida Wildflower program.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Commissioner Higginbotham for the flowers and seconded by Commissioner Beckner. Any further comment? Please record your vote.
Motion carried, 7-0.
And then D1, which was our public hearing to create a water and wastewater impact fee assessment unit.
Good afternoon, John Lyons, Public Utilities. Commissioners, we're having a public hearing today to adopt the final impact fee assessment resolution. Adopt the final assessment resolution to create a water and wastewater impact fee assessment unit 13201 for 19 parcels listed in the resolution, and there are a variety of locations around the county. Improve the impact fee assessment role, and this action will allow property owners to pay a portion of the water and wastewater impact fees over a 20-year period. It's estimated the county will collect a total of $4,634,944 over the 20-year period for the assessments imposed against the 19 parcels in the unit. These assessments would be included in the FY13 approved budget for the Water Enterprise Fund as a public hearing.
Public hearing. Anyone like to speak to this item? Got a motion to approve. Commissioner Merman, second Commissioner Miller. No comments. Please record your vote.
Motion carried, 6-0.
Actually, the next two times certains are Commissioner Higginbotham's items, so we can take some of the other regular items. Starting with B1, we have 4 procurement items. Tom Fessler is here. He can do all 4 of those for us.
Good afternoon, Tom.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Item B1 is asking you to award an executed agreement for the Causeway Boulevard and Providence Road intersection improvements to David Nelson Construction in the amount of $1,609,944.94 till project completion for the Public Works Department. Based on the MBE goals and minority participation goals, the goal was set at 20%. The recommended firm is offering to provide 12.88% of the goal, and this has been gone through a good faith efforts documentation, and it's determined to award to this firm.
For a motion? Motion, Commissioner Merman, second Commissioner Beckner. No comments. Please record your vote.
Motion carried, 7-0.
Item B2 is asking you to award and execute an agreement for the Fletcher Avenue Complete Streets to Old Castle Southern Group in the amount of $4,361,677.76 until project completion for the Public Works Department. There is a 20% goal on this project, and Old Castle has agreed to this.
Got a motion to approve Commissioner Merman, second Commissioner Miller. Please record your vote.
Motion carried, 7-0.
Item B3 is asking you to award and execute the agreements for the pump station rehabilitation 2 to 4 inch discharge pipe diameter to infrastructure restoration in the amount of $1,065,912 and Granger maintenance and construction in the amount of $1,153,266 for the Public Works Department. Both of these vendors are required to attain a 10% minority participation goal.
Motion approved. Commissioner Merman, second Commissioner Beckner. Please record your vote.
Motion carried, 7-0.
Next item.
B4?
Mike, B4 was deferred?
B4 was deferred, sorry. Then we can go back to our 2:30 time certain, which is item brought by Commissioner Higginbotham, report on the risk analysis for the Waterford Homeowners Association Bell Shoals project.
Thank you. Mr. Merrill and the staff here to make a presentation.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mike Williams with the Public Works Department. As many of you know, and you've probably gotten emails and letters from residents of Waterford, there's been quite a bit of discussion about access to and from this community on Bell Shoals Road, just north of Boyette Road. The staff is proposing to have right in and right out and a left in access, but no left out access, and this has been presented to the board before. And the community would like the left turn access out. So most recently we had a meeting with Commissioner Higginbotham and some of the residents.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Showing the wrong slides. They're showing the slides for a recognition I wanted to do during new business.
Oops. Sorry.
How's that? Sorry, that was probably a little distracting. I'll continue. So in the meeting, I guess we have a difference of opinion. So it was suggested, and we decided to move forward with a risk assessment. And this risk assessment would speak to the risks of providing this left out. And I think Mr. Fletcher can maybe speak to the risk assessment for a minute and how that would be conducted.
Well, Mike, after looking at this issue, came to me with a request to identify an expert who may be able to look at this issue. We've identified 2 forensics engineering firms that we think have the ability to take the next step. There was a study done by Bayside Engineering looking at these issues. I think the desire of the administration and the community is to kind of go the next step and look at what are the relative risks of the choices, and that's the type of discipline that we think is probably most appropriate to evaluate those risks, not just from a design standard perspective, but also looking at additional information to evaluate that risk in addition to design standards. We're in process on that. Made contact with 2 firms, and we'll hopefully have some information regarding pricing and time frame shortly.
I think part of the commitment was that as we develop a scope, we would allow the community, the Waterford community, to have input on the scope. So I think once we get a scope, we're going to plan to send it out to the community and let them add or subtract or whatever is appropriate or whatever they would like to see in this scope. In addition, most recently, construction in front of this community is ongoing. In fact, we've really been trying hard to get the intersection of Bell Shoals, Boyette, and Fishhawk complete sooner rather than later. A lot of the businesses there are very interested in having it done so that the ultimate condition is achieved so that they, traffic will flow better in the intersection in the shorter. And we've committed, or our contractor is committed to having that intersection done by May 24th. So part of this is the community has asked that we not complete the piece right in front of them, or at least the median, which would cause perhaps some small additional cost to come back later and complete it, no matter how the risk assessment ends up and how the board. So we would bring to you that as well, that to leave that incomplete. It shouldn't impact the operations of the intersection in the short term. And then for the future, I think medians and access to businesses and communities has become a very big issue, and I think moving forward we'd like to try to reassess how we view these and how we make decisions about where median openings should go. And so somewhere I think in the future we'll bring back perhaps some recommendations to you about how we do that. With that.
All right, I'll make a motion to accept the staff report and to instruct staff to proceed with the risk assessment.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Commissioner Higginbotham, second Commissioner Merman. No comments, please record your vote.
I'm sorry, Commissioners, one moment.
I'll take an oral vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried 7-0.
We have a few minutes before your 3 p.m. time certain, and so if we go back and pick up B6 under economic development. Ron Barton's here for that item.
Good afternoon, Ron.
Commissioners, good afternoon. This is a B6 item. You'll recall in the March 20th BOCC meeting, we provided you an update and an outline associated with a new program that we wanted to initiate in economic development. It was meant to basically drive growth of technology and innovation startups in Hillsborough County. We refer to it as the EDI2 program. And at that time, we provided you a fairly rigorous work program element associated with that. The board adopted that concept and also asked us to bring back to you a budget amendment that would basically fund that program, and that's what B6 is. It's a budget amendment that basically realigns $500,000 in the countywide economic development activity fund, and then $1.5 million in the unincorporated economic activity fund. So basically these are the both countywide and unincorporated reserve funds that we use for various economic development initiatives. Fundamentally, when you see incentive packages that we brought forward to you for job creation, that's typically where these come from. So we've realigned those in this budget amendment to $2 million. If you recall, this is not a one-time or an annual, I'm sorry, it is one time, but it's not an annual budget. It's meant to basically address a work program over a 3-year fiscal time frame. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Merman?
Thank you. Ron, I just want to ask you, are we going to have some accountability on this money? You're going to report back to us on how it's being spent and deliverables and all that?
I will. In fact, that was your direction on March 20th, okay, is not only to bring this item to you, but to do so on the others. And I'll give you the best analogy. This board gave us direction over a year ago to initiate an historic preservation grant program, allocated $2 million at the time to that program, and basically we were tasked to prop that program up, build criteria, build an application process, and get the money on the street with productive projects. This is really the same exact thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Got a motion approved. Commissioner Sharp, second Commissioner Merman. No comments, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you very much.
And if we could do item B10, Public Works item.
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. Mike Williams, Public Works. Item B10 is a simple budget amendment for the Duck Pond Outfall Project. This item will allow us to match the FEMA grant that the board has already approved, and this is just to get the money in place for the match. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to take them.
Okay, any questions? There's a motion by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Beckner. Without further comment, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
If we could go to G1, it's the report on the status of reserves for contingencies.
Commissioners, item G1 is a regular report on status of reserve contingencies in the tax funds. Countywide General Fund, the balance of the reserve of contingency is $36.7 million. In the unincorporated area general fund, it's $28.9 million. In the library district fund, it's $13.7 million. There has been a change since the last meeting. At your last meeting, you did approve $124,000 in funding for strategic planning activities out of the Countywide General Fund.
Current motion to receive the report. Motion, Commissioner Miller, second Commissioner Merman. Please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
And can we do G2? Someone here.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I've come forward to get your acceptance and approval on the monthly report for the Head Start, Early Head Start program. I'm Marie Mason from the Head Start Division. So it's a routine report that you get every month that outlines our expenditures that we've spent, the activities that we've done with the kids throughout and families throughout the month.
And can we have a motion to accept the report by Commissioner Merman, second Commissioner Miller? Please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
And at this time, we can take your 3 p.m. time certain, which is item A8, pulled from the consent agenda. And we have staff here to present some information concerning the project, the technology behind the work to be done by the recommended firm, and then, of course, to answer any questions that you might have.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mark Thornton, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Conservation. I don't have any presentation. We're here to answer questions regarding this item. As far as general process of the procurement, of course, our staff is here, but we do have some engineering assistance as we develop the RFP for any technical questions. So I want to introduce Ross Dickerson. He's our General Manager of ELAP. Forrest Turberville, who's a Division Manager for Conservation. John Landon is with an engineer with Landon, Morey and Associates. And Rebecca Vallone back there is formerly with our department, been with the port for several years on doing projects like this, has been just a reference guide for us.
Well, Mark, if you could just, for a minute, just describe the issue here, which is the technology that was chosen, because there's 2 different technologies that were proposed. One is a more traditional rip-wrap approach, and the other was a different system for wave displacement continuation. And so
the project is along the Apollo Beach Preserve, Nature Preserve on Tampa Bay. It's the North Hammerhead of the Apollo Beach development. We've had severe erosion over the years, and in order to stop the erosion and not have just concrete or riprap along the beach area, the project is proposed to have a system in the water to dissipate the wave energy that's causing the erosion. We looked at traditional method and of using stone, large riprap, which has been used for years. But then we had another system that's called the WAD system, Wave Action Dissipation System. It's a concrete pyramid that essentially acts the same way. It's a new technology as opposed to using the natural stone riprap. We reviewed that with all of our engineers that were working with the RFP to determine that it would be acceptable, so we added that as an option for the proposals to enter in. Out of the 3 proposals, the first recommended proposal is using regular natural stone riprap. The second used wads or stone as a less costly alternative, and the third was using just the wad system. So both systems have been determined to work. One is more proven, the natural stone, which is historically what's been used, is more proven method, but we did qualify and accept the wad system as an alternative in the proposal process.
And what makes this natural system, the natural riprap, different from other riprap systems that have not proven to withstand? I mean, the issue is,
will it work?
Well, not only will it work, but will it sustain itself over a long period of time so that we're not faced, say, in a few years having to replace it again and incur an additional cost?
I may want to have John Landon address those issues because that's getting in more technical, if that's okay.
Yeah,
John,
I want to ask a question.
Okay.
Thank you. John Landon, 31622 US 19 North in Palm Harbor. I've got about 40 years experience as a civil and environmental engineer. I am not a coastal engineer and I'm not a structural engineer. I usually rely on those people to help me when we design these type of things. I just recently designed a WADS facility just south of here. It's working fine. We're going to put in more WADS, and I'm also designing a riprap backup just for, see how the costs come out. Either one of these products will work fine. I just drove over here from Pinellas County. The causeway is covered with riprap. It's the tried and proven method. It's right out of the Corps of Engineers design book. WADS is fairly new. WADS works too. So I think what happened here is probably, a costing analysis. I didn't participate in that. I'm not sure how the numbers flushed out, but they both work. So I can give you a lot more technical details if you want, but that's the bottom line.
Commissioner Higginbotham.
Thank you. And your name is Landon?
John Landon. That's
yes,
correct.
Sir. I'm the one that brought this up, so I'm the troublemaker on this one. And it really started some time ago when I learned about the WAD system, or the wave attenuation device, which is technology that's been perfected here in this area and is proven successful. And I know that Mr. Thornton traveled all the way to Pensacola to look at a site, and I know that staff is quoted in the paper as saying this riprap isn't performing like it should, and we're coming back with high maintenance. And the reason that I had, had interjected was this may be a way to, rather than have to come back and repeat the same riprap store restoration that is not functional, that maybe the WAD program or the attenuation device would be more aesthetically appealing and would bring the shoreline back, and then as you develop the shoreline, you can move those out further into the water and build more shoreline. Is that correct?
Yeah, very, very simply, the riprap that's in there now at Apollo Beach, and that has failed, is too small to handle the wave and the fetch and everything else. This is a pretty good hitting this beach. So very simply, the rocks need to be bigger, and as I understand it, this revetment has not been designed yet. We selected somebody to design it, but they haven't spec'd the size of rocks. The only thing I saw was the core stone that you've already bought. It's kind of failing a little bit. It can be reused. But the outside of that, it just needs simply to be bigger rocks, wads, whatever. It's a mass thing, really.
So the other question or answer that I got from staff on my question was on this stone, and they said you were using lime rock, which was better than granite. Now,
lime rock's a lot cheaper than granite. What's important is the density and the overall weight, so this stuff doesn't float away.
And it's cheaper because it's lightweight, but
it's available. Lime rock's very available in Florida, very easily obtained.
Yeah, but lime rock is precipitated calcite. Is that?
That's right. But what you see more frequently is a speck on the density of the lime rock. So it's not just the same lime rock you see in a road base. It's a harder chert specification. Stronger lime rock.
Two questions on one question on two sites. Sunken Island, you're using the WAD program.
We've got WADs in, and we're designing more WADs.
Okay, and it's
with a riprap backup.
Okay, good. And what is it, Honeymoon Island? Tell me about that project.
I'm really not that familiar with it. I happen to vote in that area a lot, but I understand there might have been some failures in that area, but I'm not up on the specifics of that.
Is there anybody here, is it engineering or construction? Somebody's raising their hand. Come up and state your name for the record.
All right, I guess he's the designer, better than me.
Okay. Thank you.
Mohammed Abis with the Humsnumor Engineers, and we are the engineering firm that has teamed up with Flores and Harbor on the Apollo Beach restoration project. And also with Honeymoon Island, we are the engineer of record and the engineer who designed and built the T-groin on the park of Honeymoon Island. And we have just received the permits for the expansion of T-groin in Honeymoon Island, with addition of 3 more T-groins on Honeymoon Island to complete the protection of the coastline of Honeymoon Island.
And is this a change order?
No.
Or is this a part of the original contract?
No. The Honeymoon Island is a park, and at the beginning of that project, the concept was mainly to use sand and restore the island without using structures to keep it as pristine as possible. But because this part of Honeymoon Island was a headland, an artificial headland that was part of developments earlier in the 60s, it was not sustainable. And the sand that they used to put on the island would wash away in less than a year. So the concept was to start with an incremental approach and put one structure, a T-groin, which is a design that we have placed in Florida more than any, and has been proven with more than 7 or 8 installations over the Gulf Coast of Florida. And for the Park Service, we put one T-groin and monitored its performance and its integrity over the past 5 years. And because of its success, that the park came back to us and requested that we continue and complete the protection of that headland with additional structures, and we designed an additional 3 structures that are scheduled to be built later this fall.
Granite or limestone?
The structure at Honeymoon Island, I think it's dense limestone out of Georgia or Alabama. It's not the Florida native limestone, but we have more than 6 installations of native limestone that were installed since the 90s. Breakwaters in Marco Island, T-groins in Hideaway Beach, and in Naples, and I've got some exhibits of some of these
that's fine.
Structures here, and they've been performing to their design potential over the years.
All right, thank you for your
And that were the basis for our design for Apollo Beach.
All right. Thank you, sir. You can sit down. I think that there's technology that's available, and I feel that with the studies and the work that was brought us to this point, that we're wasting our money on this. And we're going to be back soon. And I think someone said there's a cost analysis that, you know, if we're using wads or a combination of, we're riprap, that you're going to get more for your dollar. But I'm not going to block the project, but I did want it on record. And I think that, again, when I go to your quotes in the paper saying, you know, this isn't working, and we're getting ready to just flush the money down the tidal basin. But I would love to see the new technology, which is approved by the Army Corps. It is being used, and find a way to make it work in our budgets. So I have no other questions.
Commissioner Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just to let you know, this is part of a much bigger project I've been working on for probably a year and a half to restore to bring the beach back to Apollo Beach. And it's about dredging the canals. It's been a public-private partnership. The residents have raised $200,000 to get their canals dredged and then use those materials and take it over to the beach. Now, I understand about the technology, and last I knew in my last briefing is that we were going with the WADs, which I had read up on it, and so I don't know that there's any particular other information that says it's going to work or not work. But I think I don't want the project held up for any reason because these residents have worked so hard, and I know when they start dredging, we've got to be able to move the sand over to the beach. You know, it's kind of all got to work together, and these residents have been just clamoring for this. And the fact that the TECO Technology Park is going to open, there's going to be a real kind of ecotourism type community being developed there where canoeing and kayaking will be a lot of synergy between that preserve and what's going on at that technology park. So I just wanted to kind of give you the big picture overview. I understand where you're coming from, and I want to use the best technology because the riprap that's there has not worked. And you know, we've got to have the best technology there so that it lasts a long time, because they do get a lot of wave action there. That's why it hasn't worked, because of the constant, you know, just bumping. The water's just, you know, tearing up the whole shoreline. So, thank you.
Commissioner Christ.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know a little over 2 years ago when I came here, I took an interest in South County. And even though it's not my district, I looked at it as affecting my district, because in trying to cultivate more opportunities to foster tourism here in Hillsborough County and to showcase our exquisite quality of life, I saw a lot of natural beauty down there that could and should be shared. One of them was E.G. Simmons Park. And you know, I toured it with the Parks Department and with Environmental Protection Commission, and folks, Dr. Garrity and those guys. And I know we had talked about restoration work there, and we were looking at the idea of pods or WADs. I have a question of the engineers. One of the engineers. Yes, sir. Isn't it true that that engineering isn't always an exact science?
Absolutely.
And you guys do your best to try to determine ebbs and flows and water tides and, you know, all the different currents and everything, but the bottom line is there's always that unforeseen.
It's not exact science.
Which is easier to adjust and move around to get the desired effect? The WADs or the aggregate that you throw down, or the lime rock?
No, we're getting ready to find out. We're actually relocating some WADs. We're filling in some of the gaps we had earlier. We plan on really moving them back and over, and we've been told that's simply a matter of just lifting them up and moving them over and dropping them. I've actually never moved riprap. Usually what you end up doing is filling in where riprap disappears.
Exactly. That's growing up on the beach. That's kind of what I had personally witnessed, and it is more difficult because with time it gets buried in the sand, and where, you know, the man-made product, you just connect onto it, lift it, and relocate it. Knowing that, you know, wouldn't it be to our advantage to have that kind of system working in conjunction with the aggregate that would be thrown down to make those adjustments so that we could get the greatest effect?
Well, as I said earlier, either one of these products will work. I think it's, and you don't have a final design yet either. Remember that. You've got a conceptual design. So I think they can design riprap to work, and I think they can design WADs to work. I think it's coming down to cost. And then maybe the point here is you don't have a final design to cost out. You've got a conceptual design you're costing.
I guess what I'm looking at isn't just the initial cost. I'm looking at the long-term costs. That initially is smaller additional investment. If we have to tweak it, then we're not having to go deep out of pocket in the future with a new design change in order to accomplish the effect we're trying to generate.
Well, as the Commissioner stated, you know, WADs has been adopted by the Corps, but frankly, it hasn't been around long enough to get the, you know, get a record on it. We don't know.
I agree with Commissioner Higginbotham. I think it's in many cases, it's a much more attractive tool to use, and I certainly believe it to be an easier one to readjust as we tweak, you know, our fixes in order to ensure that we get the outcomes we want. Thank you.
Got a motion approved by Commissioner Merman. Do you have a second? Second, Commissioner Christ. Please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple of other regular items here, I think. Which one? Oh, B11, yes, of course. B11 is the public feedback and discussion on adoption of the board strategic plan. And Eric Johnson is here to present the item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Eric Johnson, Strategic Planning, and I have Herb Marlowe, our consultant here. Today we're at the point of asking you to adopt the strategic plan. As we indicated a month ago, we've advertised it for a comment. We forwarded yesterday some additional information to you related to 4 specific comments that we received, and I'll just briefly mention them. But the purpose today would be to ask you to make any further changes and adopt it, put it in place. And as you know, next week you're going to have a workshop where you will begin the process of implementation of the strategic plan when you meet with the 3 mayors and the chair of HART. In terms of the comments, the first comment was the support of the plan and a compliment to the county administrator. The second comment, encourage consideration of port-related industries when you get to the point of establishing economic development areas. So that's not a change, wouldn't be a change to the plan. It's just an encouragement when you get to the point of some implementation measures. The third comment, encouraged inclusion of sustainability and specifically the county role in addressing climate change, and there's reference to New York City and Portland, Oregon, and those are communities that have taken some specific actions and responsibility for climate change. And the final comment that we received was a suggestion that we apply for the expanding Google fiber optic network as an encouragement to e-commerce, and a suggestion that we support locally sourced food. And those were the only comments we received. I just remind you, and the agenda item points out, that early in the process we had some fairly extensive public engagement with 263 participants, a total of 1,500 votes on ideas that were suggested. So we think we've had the public participation, and we would encourage you to make any changes you feel comfortable with and move towards adopting the plan.
Commissioner Sharp.
What's your time frame?
We're asking you to approve it today. A week from today, at this time, you'll be actually mostly through your first meeting on implementing the plan.
And when do you think we would be concluding the plan, concluding the discussions and actually having a product?
Well, the plan actually has specific implementation activities reflected in it, Commissioners. Beginning the second page of the plan, we have proposed actions, some of which will begin this year, some which we believe will begin next year. And as I indicated, next week you actually begin the implementation with that series of meetings related to transportation and its connection to building the economy. There are other areas, and then actually next week addresses your 5th strategy, which is facilitative leadership, and you're engaging in facilitative leadership by having those 3 mayors and HART join you in a discussion, which is and having the entire board engaged in transportation to some around. So the strategic plan doesn't necessarily have an end date, but we do have outcomes that are identified in it. Many of those have dates in fiscal 14, fiscal 15, and fiscal 16. So it is one that is both to some extent open-ended, but also has an expectation for specific outcomes and specific timelines.
Okay, can I have a motion just to receive the approval?
Second.
Motion, Commissioner Merman, second Commissioner Sharp. Please record your vote.
Motion carried, 6-0.
Good job.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Herb.
Thanks,
Thank you, Herb.
Marlowe.
Herb Marlowe's in the back, your facilitator. Couldn't have done it without both of you, so thank you very much. And I think that was the last item other than the future issues.
Future issues, Commissioner Beckner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board members actually have a couple of items. The first item is a result from some information in a report that I had seen by investigative reporter Noah Pransky concerning red camera lights. There's some details that have emerged if you listen to and look at the report that questions the timing of yellow lights at our red camera locations. And I've been a big supporter and believer, and data has backed it, that red camera lights can reduce accidents. However, also in question, though, are other reports that suggest the timing of the yellow lights, if not appropriately timed, can cause more rear-end collisions. And so what I'm asking for staff to do is to come back to the board on June the 5th with a full presentation that explains how red light cameras work in our county. And I'd like the engineering staff and the experts to be present to talk about how the timing of yellow lights are used and the appropriateness of the length of the yellow lights at each of those locations. So that's set for June the 5th. The second item is actually probably a result of our many conversations that we have today on our discussions of inclusiveness and diversity. We listened to a lot of things, and I've heard from a lot of the board members and felt that since my time in the board, this board is starting to embrace and believe that we need to live in a more inclusive community. However, you can't live and embrace those ideals if on your own books you have a discriminatory policy, and probably it is the only one in the state that, and as far as I know the country, that would suggest that government should not be involved in the celebration of gay pride events. And so on June the 5th, I will be coming back with a presentation for this board, and would ask this board that, although it was not the board that originally set up that ban and that created the walls of discrimination, that it is this board's responsibility to begin tearing down that wall, and we'll ask this board to strike down that policy.
Commissioner Merman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to bring up about the red light camera thing, too. There's a couple things involved in that. One of them is just a huge safety issue, but the second thing is DOT. Seems like people are pointing fingers at each other. DOT is now saying the municipalities can control the length of time, yet the municipalities are telling me that they have to do what the DOT standards say. So I think part of that report, if you could include, is please have an FDOT official come here and explain to us exactly what the policy is so that we can understand it. And if this board has to make a decision about time limits on yellow lights, then I'd like to know that. You know, I think that's probably a little too far, but because I think our staff can do that job, but I do think that this is getting to be a big problem. It's not like we're making a huge amount of money on this. Last year, I think we only got $1.2 million of those dollars that we collect on the red light cameras. But so there isn't, like I said, a lot of motivation on it. But I think that you know, evidently somebody is being motivated to adjust these lights to try and get some more revenue. And I don't think that's proper policy for us to follow. The other thing I had was, and I just wanted, Terry McElroy, those slides you saw about the cleanup in Town and Country when they were introducing another item. Well, I just wanted to give a big shout to the code enforcement. They went to Town and Country and worked with their youth council, and they cleaned up 1.5 tons of garbage in Town and Country, and that's pretty incredible. And the staff really took the time to go out there. You can see from these slides that they really did work hard. The other was an anonymous email I got. I usually don't react to this, but I think it was important enough to bring up here. It's from an employee that said there's a notice in the Public Works Department that they cannot communicate with county commissioners. And I think that's a problem. If we have notices like that in our departments, I mean, I know there is a chain of command, but I don't think anybody should feel like they can't talk to us. And so if you could just please investigate that and get back to us.
I thought I understood that Rob Cease had called you about that to clarify it.
I didn't hear anything.
Maybe talk to one of your aides. I'm not aware of that. Perhaps what it stems from is the fact that, you know, we have fewer staff doing jobs now, and we're trying to balance workloads, and that, you know, if one of your offices reaches down and talks to a, you know, someone lower in the organization for something more than just, you know, give me a piece of data, those people may feel like, well, it's a commissioner calling and I just need to do this. And if they don't tell their supervisor and they don't tell their manager, and it screws up the other workload that we're doing, I mean, it just sometimes takes a manager or director to assess and balance workloads. And so that may be where it stems from, but I'll look into it.
Well, I think the thing that bothered me the most is that there was a sign posted. I mean, I can understand if there's a manager talking to the employees about something, but if a sign has been posted, and that's a common thread throughout the organization, that there are signs posted in departments not to talk to us, I'd like to know about it.
Well, first of all, we need to see the sign. We're making an assumption that it says what it says. It may not.
Right.
One thing I will tell you, one thing I have told my managers is that for the reason I just described, if a commissioner's office contacts one of their employees, those employees need to let their manager know if there's additional workload. And I think you can appreciate that. But as I said, sometimes employees lower in the organization feel like, oh, it's a commissioner calling and I just need to drop what I'm doing and go do it. And maybe that's the case, but maybe it isn't. But the point is they need to communicate to their management so that management is then aware that they're actually doing something different. It's really for the employee's benefit. I mean, if an employee is expected to get certain things done and then they've gone off and done other things and not finished what they're supposed to, then the employee is the one who suffers. So I'll look into it, but I think that may be the
Well, this isn't the first time I've heard this. I know we need to keep going. This isn't the first time I've heard this. Actually, for about the last 6 months, I've been hearing a lot of it, that nobody's allowed to talk to us without going through their manager. And I just have a problem with that.
Yeah, this isn't the city. Irrespective of who the county administrator is, this board expects to have full access to county employees. And it is the responsibility of staff and the management to iron out any of the differences or any of the chain of command. That is responsibility, and they should have that. But we expect to have full access to county employees. Commissioner Miller.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I brought this up to Mr. Merrill and Mr. Fletcher yesterday. I want someone to come explain to us, and probably for the record, concerning bonus points for minority businesses on RFPs. I don't think a lot of people understand when you're looking at bonus points on an RFP, the difference between getting bonus points if a minority business is initiating an RFP and getting bonus points if a non-minority business is initiating an RFP and utilizing a minority business and they get bonus points. I hope I've made that clear. I guess I didn't make that clear because Chairman's going to be like I got two heads. There's been a question when a minority business bids on a particular that minority business does not get bonus points for being a minority business.
Oh.
Okay? Yeah. But if a company that is not a minority business utilizes a minority business as a subcontractor, they then get bonus points.
Right.
And that question has come to me as to why does not a minority business that bids for RFP, why aren't they getting bonus points? So I think we need to bring staff forward to clarify that issue, what our policy is, and let people know why there is such a difference, and if there may need to be changes. And if we can get that done at our next meeting, which is June, 5th?
Yes.
Yes, I would appreciate it.
Commissioner Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe my office has been in contact with Mr. Merrill regarding this, but recently it was brought to my attention by a very vocal constituent that there wasn't sufficient adequate time provided for seniors to take advantage of the senior discount for solid waste removal. I understand we have a discount program, and the complaint was that they got a letter from Mr. Merrill's office that was relatively within a short period of time from the date of the required submission of application, and that there were a lot of folks missing out on this as a result. And I'd like to ask Mr. Merrill if he could please look into this and report back, and if in fact there wasn't significant time, that we consider extending that opportunity.
Commissioner Beckner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And along the lines of what Commissioner Miller was saying, I think that this is part of going to what he's getting at. And one of the things that I wanted to get clarification on the policy is that, for instance, if you have a minority business that is nearly all of their employees are minorities, and if there is a requirement to get minority business points to contract out to other minorities, is that part of our policy? That's what I want clarification, because it seems rather odd that if you have a solely owned minority-owned business, and that if their requirement to get minority business bonus points is to contract out to other minority businesses, that doesn't seem to make sense to me. And maybe you could, when you bring that back, provide some of that clarification. Thank you.
Commissioner Sharp.
I just wanted to give a report on the Meta Future conference that took place a couple of days ago. Both, I know that at least the chairman and the vice chairman were both there, and it was a really successful conference. We had over 400 or 500 people attend. One of the speakers, the lunchtime speaker, was a gentleman who writes for Forbes magazine. He was just talking about the fact this is a multi-trillion-dollar industry and looking for a home, and that Tampa Bay is in competition for some of those dollars. And so I was appreciative of that, and as well, both the chairman and vice chairman were also last night at the an event that was hosted at the University of South Florida in the new lab, genomics lab, that Dr. Liggett, who came here about a year ago, is heading up. And I would say to the entire board, I thought it was very heartening to see that at that event as well was the president of Tampa General Hospital, the new president of Tampa General Hospital, who wants to work with Dr. Klasko. So they were very clear, all the attendees, that there's a new spirit, and in part because I think some of the action that this board took at our retreat, and then just the involvement of Ms. Berman and Hagan and many of the other members, but just the fact that we had the chair and the vice chair, that was really great. So it's a good event.
I appreciate Commissioner Sharp bringing that up. They had lab coats with our names on them, and I told them that for the commissioners that did not attend, that they wouldn't be interested in having a lab coat. So, what? I'm just kidding. Okay. We had 7 individuals that signed up for public comment, did not have an opportunity to speak. I believe there's one person here, Rodrigo Diaz. If you're here, please come forward, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for coming back.
Good afternoon. My name is Rodrigo Raul Diaz, and I live at 4401 Oakmont Lane in Hillsborough County. I have come this afternoon to speak to the County Commission regarding Board Policy Section number 02.14.00.00, which states, quote, Hillsborough County government abstains from acknowledging, promoting, and participating in gay pride recognition and events, close quote. When this policy was enacted in June 2005, it was not the right thing to do. In the years since then, it has also begun to look like an anachronism. Attitudes towards homosexuality have evolved and will continue to evolve across our country. Our society is becoming more accepting of the natural differences in sexual orientation that exist among people. Now is a propitious moment to reconsider Hillsborough's anti-gay pride policy. The policy may be largely symbolic, but official symbols do matter in a community. Symbols that represent respect and reason encourage us to follow our dreams and take heart in the face of adversity. Symbols that embody fear and misinformation undermine the understanding and goodwill a community needs to realize its potential. For these reasons, I ask you, the members of the Commission, to take all necessary steps to repeal the county's anti-gay pride policy during your current term of office. Doing so will make our shared home a little better for all its residents. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Diaz, for your comments. Okay, if no other action, we're adjourned. Thank you.